Hey Naga, I think this is the third session that I'm conducting for all of my friends.
Yeah, I saw a
And
couple of
last,
them last week. Yeah, a little bit last week. Yeah.
Naga, are you on speaker? I'm getting my echo.
How about now?
Now,
Okay, I'll join back again. Just go ahead.
okay. Uh, I don't know. I'm getting my voice echo. Oh, it maybe I was on the recording, but seems now it's. I can hear. Can you hear, guys?
Yes.
Okay, good. So today, I think last time what we have discussed about the web apps, just to consolidate what we have covered. So we have created web apps. We also did talk about the application service environment. We talked about the different hybrid connectivity model. Uh, we talked about deployment slots, web jobs, and custom domain name. How do you give it to that? We also talked about the application service code editor. And I think we didn't cover the Azure Web, so probably in subsequent session we will cover that. We also didn't cover the Kudu interfaces. Maybe in subsequent session I will cover, and also how to restrict IP from certain traffic. But in today's session, we'll talk about Azure SQL. So, uh, in many of you know, right? And I think we have worked with the database in some form or other form in our entire IT career. So SQL Server is, I think, it's very popular platform, and it's offering from Microsoft. Now, Microsoft has two. If you have used SQL Server 2014 or 2016, you had SQL Server running on VM, and that SQL Server you have used in production. Now with Azure, there is something Microsoft is offering something database as a service, DBAS. Essentially, what it is a managed offering from Microsoft, so you can have your database and SQL Server managed by Microsoft. It's a platform as a service offering. You just go ahead, provision your SQL Server, and start using it. So you really need not worry about the underlying infrastructure maintenance, like you have your operating system, you have to patch it, you have to install a SQL Server, you have to care for licensing, and all those sort of things which comes as a part of infrastructure management. You don't have to really uh, do that if you consume platform as a service or Azure SQL from Microsoft, right? So i- today, what are we going to do is we will. I will not take more time in theory thing. If you have any question about Azure SQL per se, you can ask now, and then I will move on to what we'll do is we will create an Azure SQL instance and through Azure portal, and from there we will see how we can interact with Azure SQL. We will create database. We will connect to that database using SQL Server Management Studio. We'll also configure encryption, TDE, which is basically you want to enable the transparent data encryption. You want to encrypt the databases. We will also see how to enable Azure AD integrated authentication, which is a kind of authentication mechanism that you can, in addition to SQL local auth, you can also enable the Azure AD authentication. So all these things we'll see in action. But before I dive into the practical aspect, any question in general? Anybody has any question about Azure SQL as such? No question? Good. Then probably what we'll do is I will log into the Azure portal, and we will. What are we going to do is we will create an Azure SQL first. So when you create an Azure SQL, you have your SQL database, and then you have your SQL Server. So basically, SQL Server is nothing but a logical name given to a collection of databases that you will create on your SQL Server. So when you create a SQL database, if it is the first time, you will have to also create a SQL Server, and you will choose your pricing tier. What kind of, and depending on what pricing tier you choose, you will get different features and different flavors of Azure SQL. So for example, so if I have to create one, so I will go ahead. So if you look at the left, right, so I have a SQL database. Either you can, start from here. You can add a SQL from here, or you can also, click on the left side and then you can create a SQL database. So I will just go ahead and create one SQL database. So it is asking me for, the database name. So let's give,
Hey, hi Neeraj.
hey,
I was in the wrong Hangout session here.
hey, Kana, no problem. I think I did send out email with the correct
Uh,
Hangout session.
okay. When
Okay.
did you send
So
that? Okay.
I sent it maybe 20 minutes back, and I also
Oh,
posted in the chat.
okay. I missed that.
No problem. So, Karan, what are we doing is today we are talking about Azure SQL, which is a platform as a service offering from Microsoft. It's a SQL or it's a database as a service. Essentially, it's a managed database offering from Microsoft. So, uh, in today's session, we will walk through of the option of creating a SQL database and how to set the different options, like how to set the TDE, how to set the firewalls, and how to restrict access to the database. And also, like, we will see how we can use SQL Server Management Studio to connect to the database. So at present, I'm in process of creating a SQL database. So when you come over here, in the SQL and you try to create a database, you have to fill out certain parameters. So, for example, obviously you have to give a database name. So let's give this a name. So now this name, what you see over here, it has to be this is your database. The database name that we are creating. Again, it's the same thing. Subscription, which subscription you want. So I will leave my default subscription. As usual, with any resource that you create in Azure, you have something called resource group. So you will organize your resources under a collective umbrella called a resource group. It's an administrative boundary. Either you can create a new resource group or you can use an existing one. In my case, I will use the existing one, which is my Azure App One. Now, as a part of database creation, you have two options. Either you can create a blank database and then later you come back and populate it with your actual data, or you can also create a copy of SQL. So SQL has Adventure Work LT, which is a kind of dummy database that Microsoft always shipped with their Azure, with their SQL Server. So either you can take that source, or if you have a backup, we will not cover that, but in case, let's say you had a backup from on-prem SQL Server and you wanted to use that to populate this database, you can also do so. But today what we'll do is instead of blank database, we will create a database which will be pre-populated from the data items from the sample database which Microsoft shipped by default with its SQL Server. Then next, if you move on, you have server. So essentially, right now, what you have given is you have given the database name, right? So if people who have worked in database field, they know that you have a server name, and or rather an instance, and then on that instance of SQL Server you have multiple databases. So we have just given the name of database here. Now we'll have to give the server name on which this database is going to reside. Now essentially this doesn't mean that Microsoft will create a server for you, but it's like a logical name given to that database server for you and for your ease of use, so that when you connect through SQL Server Management Studio over here, you can specify your uh, server name. So in that case, the server name we will put in the server name that we are going to populate now. So if I come back, I come back here, and if I don't have a server, so like I'll have to create a new server again. As I said, this is going to be a logical name, nothing in the background. Microsoft manages everything. So what I'll do is I will give it a name, and this name has to be unique under this namespace, which is database.windows.net, and it's a public endpoint. So basically, it's exposed to internet. However, it is secured using SSL, and the traffic is encrypted. Now, this name has to be unique within the database.windows.net domain. It's shared by everybody, whoever is creating Azure SQL. So let's see if we can find a unique name. Azure SQL Server. Right? So it looks like it is a unique name. Now here, if you look at it, you have to specify your server admin. This is going to be a local user inside that Azure SQL. So you can create a user account that you have to specify that user account you will use when you're connecting from SQL Server Management Studio to connect to this server. So what I'll do is I can take any name, but I will use uh, usually I use that name, yeah, and I will put in the password. Okay, and then you have location. So where you want to host it, depending on the location of your resources, the servers where it is going to reside. You want the closest location for your SQL server. So you can select different data state, different Azure regions, as per your choice. So I will leave it to default. This is where I have all my resources. That is South Central US, and then I will go ahead and say select. There is another option over here, right? So this maybe we will talk about later, but essentially what it does is uh, this will allow any Azure services. So when I say you have Azure Web Apps, you have Azure VMs, or any Azure services which would like to connect to your SQL Server using the credential, if you have created a connection string, they will be allowed to connect. If you untick this, then what will happen is you will have to explicitly allow any of the services that is gonna connect to this using. You have to configure that setting in Azure SQL Firewall. So if you look at it, the explanation, it clearly says that this is firewall settings, and you can always control this setting from there. But I will leave it. This is the default setting that people leave it. But in certain scenarios, you may disable it and then configure the firewall to accept traffic only from certain IPs. But at this point of time, I will leave. I trust Azure and Azure services. I will leave this setting as it is and don't uncheck it. So I say select. Now, so what we did, right? So we will just put in DB, so it's easier. So I have given database name. I have selected my resource group. I have selected the source from where I will populate the data. So this is going to be sample. I've also now given the server name. Now this is where something which you can. It's a very interesting. So Microsoft offers something called Elastic Pool. Is where Microsoft gives you a DTU, database transaction unit, and if you select certain DTU, Microsoft is going to give you that, guarantee that kind of throughput. So DTU is your database throughput. When people connect, when your applications connect and hit the database server, you can decide on what and it can elastically scale depending on what you need. So today I probably will not cover the elastic pool, but this is just good to know that you can dynamically scale and be you just based on the load, you can scale. But today we'll not discuss about the elastic pool, so I will just go with the normal pricing tier. So if you come here, so I have selected SQL elastic pool as not now. So I have to select my pricing tier. Now you can come here. Now you can look at it. What are different pricing tiers that you have, and based on what is your requirement, you can select. So, for example, if it is uh, standard, you have different tiers within the standards also, right? So you have within the standard, you got the 50 DTU which you can apply, which is going to monthly cost you $75. This is one. So if I come to the basic. So in basic, you will get 5 DTUs. So what is DTU? As I said, it's a database transaction unit. It's a unit to measure the performance of the database. And if you select basic, you're going to get 5 DTU as a part of basic. Plus, you also get storage of 2 GB. So if you're really small, doing a POC, and those kind of stuff, then probably you can select basic. But if you have production workload, as you can say, Microsoft is also clearly outlining it for most production workload. You can use your standard one, and if it is really high IO intensive, you can go with the premium. Go up, you can see the price as $465 per month. And then you have something called premium RS also, which is for very high IO intensive workloads. So that the price can also go up. So depending on what's your requirement, you have freedom to choose the different pricing tier. Microsoft gives you different pricing tier, and every pricing tier comes with its own set of benefits and uh, uh, DTUs and the storage included as part of that. So just for demo purpose today, I'm going to select base use so that I can keep my cost to the bare minimum. All right.
Neither
So yeah,
is seeing the premium and premium
go ahead.
RS. The price of the premium RS is lesser than the premium.
It's okay. Yeah, you're right. So I need to really look into this. Why? What's the difference between
Hey
premium
dear,
and
if you see the difference, it is written highest availability and here it says limited availability. So availability will not be guaranteed, I think, in this. It's a limited availability.
yeah, probably yeah, that could be. So also okay, so I get it. In premium, you get 6 replicas or 6 copies of your database, which is maintained by Microsoft. This is so this is premium RS. This is a new one. Probably I'm also looking at the first time, and this is still in preview. It's a restricted one, which means instead of 6 copies here, they'll maintain 3 copies here. So
And
that's
not
what
only
I think.
as it is in preview, so definitely it has to be less because it will not be supported in production.
Correct, correct. So this is in preview, and to be honest, I have not looked it. First time I'm looking at this. So, but
No,
that's a
and
good
I think
catch.
Neeraj, even there is a difference in DTU also. Like they have 1,000 compared to
Uh,
1,000.
yes, yes. So maximum you can go up to 1,000 DT over here, and whereas in case of premium you can go up to 4,000 DTUs. That's correct. That's also one of the difference. But I think it's premium RS is premium restricted, if I'm not mistaken. But as I said, it's a new offering, so maybe uh, we can look into this. But for today's sake, I will stick to the basic, so that we can. One plus, it's my MSDN subscription, so I don't have enough USD dollar to spend on the SQL, right? So I say apply. I select basic, And then this is collation. Collation, I think it's by default is SQLite in general. You cannot change it. You don't have that option, especially in the Azure SQL. So we will persist with the default collation for Azure SQL.
What, Neeraj, here there is an option called automation option. What is that?
So whatever we have done here, if you want to deploy
Okay.
it through PowerShell, deploy it through JSON script, in that case, if you click on this, it will give you equivalence of this, the JSON script. So for example, if I click on this, so you can look
Oh,
at, this is a JSON script that you have. Similarly, Microsoft will also give you the PowerShell. So for example, see what we have done. We have created Azure SQL database first, and so it's a new Azure resource group deployment. So basically what they're doing is they're giving automated way to provision the same stuff. So here you have resource group name, resource group location, subscription ID, the template file partner. So to deploy the same stuff in automated fashion. So let's say you want to create a template, you can do so. And there are different format of template that you have available. You have CLI, which is command line interface. It's more on Linux, for Linux platforms, but you can use CLI on the Windows also. PowerShell you have, .NET, if you want to use in your code. And then this is the JSON template. That essentially JSON template, this is where you will specify your database name. And when you deploy it, it will ask you all those details what we are providing in our console portal,
oh,
right? So I mean, this is for your uh, if you need automated script, Microsoft has already done in the background. Essentially, whatever you're doing here is getting in the background. It calls the Microsoft Azure APIs and provision all the stuff that we are doing. So essentially, it's they give you this option of automation. So go ahead and create one. So what it will do is it will start the validation process, and it will start the deployment process. Let's see how much time it takes. And then we can come back here. This is my resource group. And if you see my Azure SQL, just all running. It's deploying. So let's give a couple of minutes, and then meanwhile, anybody has anything to talk or discuss about Azure SQL in general? So how many of you know about PaaS versus IaaS difference? So what is really, because SQL you can also run on a VM, and SQL you can also use this Azure SQL, which is a PaaS offering. So
Neeraj, I have
anybody?
one question.
Mhm.
You have created an admin account for SQL. So will that be a part of SA or?
Yeah, it's on the same line. That's correct. So SA was the local default account, right? That gets created as a part of master DB, which is the configuration database.
Okay.
So in this case, the account user that I have given is a local authentication. It's not going to be like on-prem. You had local authentication and Windows integrated authentication, right? So
Mhm.
here, the account that I have created, it is going to be part of the database configuration, or the master DB, where you have.
Okay.
So this is a local account. So now let's come back here. It's now deployed. Come on. So here you have, right? I have Azure SQL. This is a SQL server, and this is the database inside that SQL server. Now, if you want to perform any kind of management task, what do you need to do? First, you need to connect to this SQL server using SQL Server Management Studio. You can download it; it's free, and then you can connect to your SQL Server. So in order to connect to SQL Server, we will utilize this Management Studio, and we'll have to specify the server name. So let me get back to the portal and get the server name here. So this is my guy, right? This is my SQL Server, and where is my name? What? Oh, okay. I will click on the database. That will give me the server name. So this is my server name. So I will just go ahead and copy it. SQL Server Management Studio, and there I will paste. This is my SQL Server name, right? So wow, Azure SQL SRV dot. Now this database dot Windows dot net is any database that you create is this is the common endpoint. Like for example, for a web app, you had Azure Websites dot net. For database, it is database dot Windows dot net. Similarly, any Microsoft PaaS services that you will create will have a common URL. So obviously for SQL, it is database dot Windows dot net. Now over here, you have different options for authentication. And now in my case, you see SQL Server authentication, you have Windows authentication. Now Windows authentication is if you were connecting to on-prem SQL Server, then in that case it will go with Windows integrated. But in case of SQL, Azure SQL, you will only make use of the uh, SQL Server Auth or the Azure Active Directory authentication. So even in Azure Active Directory also you have different authentication mechanism, which I will talk about in a couple of while when we go and configure the Azure integrated authentication. Sorry. So, but right now we are going to use the local account that we have created. So it was and password is. Now if I connect, let's see. Uh, I get cannot connect to wow Azure SQL Server Windows.net. Cannot open by the login. Client IP is not allowed to access the server. Anybody can guess what's the problem here? Any guesses? So it says cannot open, which is fine. Now again, the next it says client IP. Now which IP is this? Is a mask one. This is my IP. Is not allowed to access the server. It also tells how you will enable. It says to enable these access the Windows Azure Management Portal or run SP set firewall rule.
That means you need to allow the port 1433 for this IP or on this IP.
You're almost close. You're almost close. Any other guesses? So it's a firewall related problem for sure, right? So it is, in fact, it's good that it's giving me a very intuitive error message, which is also telling me the resolution. So the resolution at least is telling it has something to do with the firewall. So essentially what has happened is as a part of configuration, when you create a SQL server, you remember we had an option to uh, allow Azure services in checkbox, which allowed any Azure services to access this server, but that's only Azure services. Now I'm trying to access that from my local machine, which is not part of Azure service. It's not a VM in running in Azure. It's not a web app, anything. So it won't let me do that until I explicitly set the database, the Azure SQL server level firewall to accept connection. So so what we have to do is, so if we come, we will have to set the database firewall. Now if you look at it over here, right, it is a set server firewall rule. Can you see it? So right now I'm looking at the database property. Database, sits inside a server. So we'll have to go back and, set the server firewall, which we have created for Azure SQL. So, and then from there, I will allow my IP to let and come and connect to this server. So I will come here, I'll go to set SQL server, and you see this. It's showing me my IP. So now if I go ahead and add this IP, then this will let me, connect through my SQL from my SQL Server Management Studio, and that's precisely. If you look at it, the only uh, server, the only system, the only service which is allowed to access the SQL Server is only the Azure service, only this one, right? And my laptop is not part of Azure service. So what I have to do is, in fact, it's for ease of use. It's showing me my IP address. Now remember, this is your public IP address. Now, when you connect from home, this public IP may change. Today I get this, tomorrow you get something else. So if you're doing that kind of administration from your personal laptop, please make sure that, come over here and make sure that your client IP address is added as a part of firewall route. Then only you can connect to the SQL server. Now here I will go ahead and add the client IP. So what it will do is it will pick up my IP. This is my public IP, and it will add it. So you look at it, so right, so you can also do it manually. You It's a rule name that you need to specify. So this has already taken. Start IP is this. You can also specify a range of IPs basically. So what it essentially is doing is, it's allowing this IP to connect to the SQL server on 14334. So I will go ahead and say save, and hopefully this will fix my problem. So let's come back to this guy over here, and I say connect. Voila. So looks like we are in, right? So what was the problem? The problem was we didn't had security configured or firewall configured to accept the connection from my laptop, right? So next time when you create any server, please remember to come back in firewall settings, and then you add your public IP, and obviously which you can see over here as a part of the firewall rule. Okay, good. So now we are connected. Let's see what we have. You remember we created one database, right? So if I expand my database, I will see my Wow Azure DB, and this database was created based on the table, which was based on the adventure work, if I'm not mistaken. So let's look at the product that I have. I'll say right click, and I say select top 100 rows. So it should show me first 100 or first 1,000 records. Oops. Let's try it once again. Uh, mm -mm, mm -mm, mm -mm, mm -mm. Okay, I'll close it. Try it once again. So it crashed on me.
Neeraj,
Yeah.
this IP is a NATed IP, right?
This is yeah, it's a NATed IP. It's my
Your public
NATed
IP.
public IP. Yeah, it's my NATed public IP. But you'll have to. This is where you'll have to specify the public IP, because this is a public endpoint. This is we connect over internet, so you cannot specify your private IP. That's not going to work. You'll have to specify your public IP.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay. So now you see that I asked to select top 1,000 rows, so it has returned my data over here. And this, by the way, this is connected to our Wow Azure SQL SRB. And just to show that it's a public endpoint, I will show you the NS lookup. So what is my NS lookup? And Wow Azure SQL SRB. So this is the public IP that we have. This is internet resolvable. And if you look at it, the this is my server name, right? But the actually it is a CNAME record that I have been created, and I have been my actual database is over here. And this is an alias name given to uh, this is the original server that where I have my database hosted. Now this is a shared platform, everybody has shared it, but just to give you an idea, this is a public endpoint and accessible from internet, but nobody else can access it if you have configured your firewall, right? So my firewall is configured to only accept traffic from my laptop and plus Azure services. So nobody else can really connect to it. So this firewall database SQL Server Firewall gives you that ability to restrict the traffic. Right. Now I will show you the account that we have created. Remember, we have created in EA account. So this is the master configuration database that you will create inside anyone. And if you come under security, under the users, you will see that I have this user account over here, which is this is the one that we have created. So this account is a local account to our SQL Server. And Naresh, you remember you asked this question, right? Where is this account is getting created? So this is a local account.
Yeah, got it.
Now, in security parlance, this is not a very secure way to authenticate to your database, right? SQL database. So what Microsoft has done is Microsoft has released a feature called equivalent to Windows integrated authentication in on-prem world, something called Azure AD integrated authentication, wherein you will be able to utilize identity from Azure AD as opposed to identities sitting in your master database, which is in your configuration of system database. So that way what it will do is it will help you to decouple your identity store from the your data store. So it's one of a security practice wherein you don't want to have your data and identity sitting at the same place. Hence the SQL local auth is not preferred or very popular in security world, because your data is also here, your identity is also here. So essentially, what you will do is you will decouple the identities and the data, identity to data and identity to access that data. So now what we will do next is, so anyway, you can see, right? So I'm connected to the SQL database using SQL Server Management Studio. We did configure SQL Server Firewall to allow connection. Next, what are we going to do is we will uh, examine some of the property of SQL Server, Azure SQL, and also we will, configure the Azure AD integrated authentication. So let's come back here. What are different properties that I can see on my database, right? So you have pricing tier, which we know we selected our pricing tier, which was the basic, but you can change at any point of time if you want to change it. We selected this at the time of creation of our database. I have gone in with the basic, but if you want, your workload has gone up, if 5DT is not sufficient, you want to upgrade, you're always welcome to choose the higher tier standard or a premium, whichever suits you. So that's the pricing tier. Uh, then you have something called Geo Replication. Now,
Hey, Neeraj,
remember, uh-huh.
Neeraj. So again, my question is like similar like a web app only. So what will happen if my
Uh-huh.
work is not getting done? I wanted to have a scale up, like a vertical changing the way we spoke right now. So what will happen? The DB has to be down for some time when we are doing this, or we can be up only all the time.
I assume there shouldn't be a downtime, and the upgrade should be pretty quick. So let's see. I mean, we can try, an upgrade now. So let's say if I go with standard and I say apply, and while I'm applying, first of all, we'll see how much time it takes to upgrade it. The second, in the meantime, I'll also have this guy open, wherein I will run the same query, or this time I'll select from customers. Okay. So let's go ahead and do it. It's doing it. It is in progress. And I say select top 100 rows. Yeah, so I don't see a downtime while it is working in the background. It is still working, right? Database scale is still in progress. So let me run another query and select top 1000 rows. Let's see. It's giving me the result. Uh, Sorry, if nobody's speaking, you can mute yourself. Kanan, I'm going to go ahead and mute yourself. Where do I see? Yep. Okay. Yeah, so I don't see any downtime per se. So you can upgrade and still your database is available.
Great news, thanks.
That's what. Okay. So okay. So next is geo replication. You remember I said that you can set up your replication. So essentially, what you can do is, if I come back into this, right? So what you can do is, let's say you have Azure SQL, as a database and sitting in one region, and then you want to have a secondary replica in other region. So essentially, a read-only copy. You can configure a SQL geo replication between Azure SQL, and what that will do is, it's kind of SQL mirroring. Anything that you write over here, it gets written, whether depending on what's a 30-second to 1 minute of difference, it will get written into the your mirrored SQL Server, which is geo-replicated. And since it is a geo-replication, you will be charged twice. So one for this server, which is the storage cost and all the tier capacity. Plus, you will also get charged for the secondary database. and you can set that configuration. And anything that you write over in the primary database will get automatically written to your secondary database. You have that setting over here in the Geo Replication. So if you come, currently we are in South Central, it will also tell you which is your recommended, because South Central paired region is North Central. But Microsoft will give you that recommendation because Azure has its own paired region. But if you have other requirement and you want to put it in, let's say you have certain application sitting in US, also in India, in that case you can select your India region and have it replicate to India Azure region. But you can just select, in my case, I can select the North Central, which is the paired region. And as you see here, when you create the geo replication, you have different settings. One was the region that we have selected, so we logged it to North Central, the database. The secondary type, the secondary type that we want to create, what kind of secondary that you want? Do you want readable copy or non-readable? Readable copy is something like it will also be available for you. You will not be able to make any changes, uh, but you will be able to read it. Now, this non-readable, what you see over here is Microsoft is going to soon retire this. If you look at in non-readable secondary will be retired. So essentially, if you select non-readable, uh, that database will still be there. The only time when you fail over, then only you will be able to make use of it. Otherwise, you won't be. But we'll select readable so that it is available for us. The primary is also available, and the second is also available for as a read copy. And when you fail over, you can make the secondary as primary, and then use that. Then what you need to do is, if you look at closely, as I said, it's a SQL mirror replication. It's a SQL replication. So you'll have to now configure the target server. Now we don't have any server over here in the North Central, and you'll also have to select the the pricing tier that you have to. So target server, I'll have to create one. It's on the same parameter that we have created in South Central. So let's say SRV1. See, if I put the same name, it won't take it because it's already taken by my first instance. And I say server admin, server admin, same. I'll keep that same. For the password again, I'll confirm. And the same thing over here, allow Azure services. I will leave that as it is. Now this is where this will come into the handy, right? So if you look at it, when I say allow services, in this case, the primary, right? This database over here needs to write to this guy. Now, if I uncheck the setting which says allow Azure services to access, potentially this will fail, because this is also an Azure service which is trying to access this, and right over here. Now it's firewall. If I uncheck allow Azure services, this firewall will block that connection. So that's why it's very essential, very important to understand that when you want to uncheck it. And if you really want to uncheck that, you have to make sure that you have uh, considered all the scenarios, all the security options before you really uncheck that. Okay. So I will come here.
Neeraj, one question. These two replicas will be like
Sure.
active kind of thing?
So what its primary is going to be writable, this will be readable, and you can't make a changes over here, but you can fail over. When you fail over, then it will become writable.
Oh, okay.
But it will be, you can say, active, passive. So this one will be active. Anything that you write over here will get simultaneously written, or 30-second delay, or depending on what the pricing tier you have, there will be a delay. But then you get it gets written over here.
So,
Now this will be.
for readable also, they will Microsoft charges this.
Yeah, the reason is because, let's say if you have 2 GB of storage here, right?
Okay, yes.
You will also get 2 GB storage here.
Mm.
because in order to replicate the database, you need to have the same amount of size there.
But
So Microsoft is
but
charging you for
but
that.
what about the DTU?
You will get the same DTU. That's what. So I will show you that when we're creating, it's asking us to select those options. So this will be a readable copy. You will get the same performance. The only thing is you will not be able to make change, but you will do everything what you can do here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's you pay double. I mean, essentially you are creating another. You're not doing anything special here. In real world, what you would have done, you have one SQL server running on a box and another SQL server running on a box. So you pay for two boxes, right? And then you
Mm-hmm.
configure the SQL replication or SQL mirroring.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing. So same thing over here. So if I come back to this, right? So I select the readable copy, and obviously, so let's finish this server name first. So I will select this, finish the server name. Now this is where it's coming. You have to select the pricing tier. See, so obviously my is a standard, so it's giving the same as a standard. So I will just stick with what it is. So essentially, this pricing tier is same as my primary one. Correct? You remember we upgraded our from basic to standard, and this is was the cost. So this is what I'm gonna get the cost. The same thing. Creating a mirror, and that's it. That should be it. Uh, yeah. So this is the pricing tier that you have different tiers, like you have standards. Even standard also has different model. This is for the DTU. This is for elastic database. So we are not using eDTU. We are talking, and this is your replication feature. So you can replicate this, but again, as I said, you'll have to pay for. It's not two times, but it's 0.75 times of primary database price. So the Microsoft charges it three-fourth, basically. Not the not the double price. So it's only the three-fourth. Okay, so we'll say okay. Uh,
Neeraj, if you don't want to use like SQL Azure, if you are using just normal SQL, so no need to
hmm?
pay for. You need to only pay for the computing and storage, not for the this Azure, right?
Correct. So you'll pay for compute hours, you'll pay for storage, and you'll also pay for SQL licensing. Right?
Okay.
You have
Okay.
two options. Either you bring your own license, be all, or you buy from marketplace. If you buy from marketplace, in that case, that compute hours will include the licensing cost as well.
Oh.
So, so it's up to you. But as I said, in case if you want to run SQL Server on infrastructure as a service, it has its own advantage. There is a whole set of competition features that you can do. What is so? For example, one of the use cases, like for example, if you look at here, uh, so while this is creating, we will examine. So it looks like it's done. But anyway, so here you come, right? So this is called transparent data encryption, TDE. Now you can turn on the TDE, which will encrypt the database and the SQL layer. But the key is managed by Microsoft. Now you cannot bring your own key for TDE in Azure SQL or PaaS SQL. If
Mm-hmm.
you have security requirement to have management of key done by your organization, in that case, your PaaS SQL or Azure SQL is not going to suffice a requirement. In that case, you will run your Azure SQL you will run a SQL Server 2014 or 2016 on infrastructure as a service box. Plus, there are certain services like in case of SCOM cannot integrate with Azure SQL. As of today, I don't know if SCOM 2016 can be integrated, but for that you will need a SQL Server running on a box. So if you need to run SCOM infrastructure in Azure environment, uh, you know,
Mm.
uh, in that case, probably you will require infrastructure as a service SQL running on IS box.
Mhm.
right? So here it says deployment is succeeded. Now, if I come back here in Geo Replication, you can see, right? So it's showing me that I have this is my primary and this is my secondary. It's showing me this is the primary. This is primary is online and this is the secondary. And I can choose two things. I can make this fella a primary one. So I'll say failover. In that case, what will happen is this guy becomes my primary. Now, the any application which is making use of it will have to go and make the change of the SQL Server name, because the SQL Server name is different, right? So depending on what is your use case, whether you will fail over or you want to break the application also. So if I say failover, so basically what it's going to do is this will become the primary will become secondary, and the secondary will become primary. So that's what it's saying. So the old primary will automatically become the new secondary if it is online, and the this is what is my secondary database, which will become now primary. I say yes. You will see it will switch. So currently it may take some time, but it's, so right now you see that my SQL SRV is my primary. Now after this failover, I will say SQL SRV1 as my primary. It may take some time. Yep, it's like pending, pending, pending. Let's come here.
Yeah, needed. So, in other words, basically, when you're talking about the practically, we'll be having a web app. So, probably
Uh-huh.
accessing to our the SQL Server 1. So, if whatever region it is down, so it will straight away it will go and use SQL Server 2 in another region. Am I right? Without doing anything from our side, because we have done the configuration required.
So this is where we are doing. This is you may have to recon, because this is not we are doing. Uh, uh, this is we are doing a manual failover. We are doing it for our own convenience. Now, let's say you're talking about Microsoft. Let's say Microsoft South Central is down. Okay, and we had only database in South Central, and if it is you have selected premium, it maintains 6 copies, 3 copies within the region, 3 copies across the paired region. In that case, Microsoft will automatically take care of the failover. You don't have to really worry about it. But in our case, what are we doing right now is we are doing it, we are creating a manual replica for our purpose. Of one purpose could be that this could be my reporting server, right? I want to generate a report from the same database, but I don't want to hit my primary database because it will cause poor performance. So in that case, I will use this. The second is as a case of DR for the in the sense that you have your own requirement, and not in terms of Microsoft DR, but your application level DR, you want it in the other region, you can also do so. But you will have to, in this case, you'll have to make like for connection string would change for you. Connection string like SQL Server name would change, right? So the primary is going to become secondary, and secondary is going to become primary. So you will use SRV in the to begin with, but if you fail over, then you'll have to change your connection string to SRV1.
Yeah. So, Neeraj, in other words, you told us have summarized. You told that if you are going with the primary one, that you told that you have a South Central. So, if you are into premium
Yeah,
one, maybe that a server at one place may not be working in data center one. So, it will make it data center two, and our application will working fine. This is one of the purpose you told. But if due to whatever you told, like reporting or some other purpose, I am
yes,
doing it to
yes,
some other place. So in that case, we required a manual intervention to change the connector string so that it will point to the north central and our work will be getting there. But if you got some manual
correct.
interruption, so our application will be down for some time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, right now, if you look at it, it's taking time, it's doing the application, it will do the failover. But essentially, what will happen to failover? What it failover is doing is this guy will become primary, which means it will accept the read write, but this guy will only require, receive only read. So it will only provide you data, but you can write anything. right? That's what we created, the replicas.
Yeah, so Neeraj, in your words, just trying to understand from your side that so failover we will be doing all these things, but the thing is that when we are it's down, right? The primary is down, then only we have to change the string, right? So always it
Correct,
will be the string. So
correct,
whatever you
right,
are doing, it not need to do when it is down. Am I right?
correct, correct.
Thanks, Neeraj.
You're correct. So let it go on. It will take some time. Meanwhile, we can come over here and look at the TDE. You know that TD is encryption for SQL, as we have AD, Azure Disk Encryption for. So you have separate level, different tiers of encryptions. So at the top level you have storage level encryption. So it gets encrypted at the SAN level, or in our case it will be storage account level. So you have SSE, storage side encryption, or storage service encryption. So anything and everything that you put in, if you enable SSE, all storage that you create in that, like for example blob storage, table, file, queue, anything that will be encrypted, because we have enabled encryption storage level. The next is your the encryption at the volume level. So, or maybe you can call it your C drive or D drive, right, in operating system. So that is called ADE, Azure Disk Encryption. In Azure Disk Encryption we use BitLocker as one technology. For Linux it is DMencrypt. Then finally you come to next layer of encryption, wherein you have applications like you have SQL Server, you have SharePoint, you have SCOM. So all these application, they store data in a flat file format or some kind of file, or like indexes that has to be encrypted. So application also provides encryption capability. In case of SQL, that application level encryption capability is called TDE, transparent data encryption. So it uses the same encryption technology to encrypt. So you will have a TDE key with which you will enable the encryption. Now in this case, if you have a security requirement and your security mandates it, you can turn on the transparent data encryption. So I can go ahead and turn it on. So you will come over here in the transparent data encryption, and then turn it on. And if I click on save, uh, oh, okay. So it is the work is. We're still waiting for the Geo Replication to complete. So let's come over here. It is still showing, the status is pending. So maybe once it is completed, then we can turn on the TT. Then okay. So by the time it's doing it, we still have time. It will take some time. Let's dive into Azure AD integrated authentication, right? So we all have looked here. Uh, what we have used is we have used our local authentication to connect SQL. Now what we will do is we will flip this, and we will use our Azure AD credentials to log into this SQL server. So how do you do that? So for that, you will have to go to the Azure SQL server that we have created. So you'll have to configure Azure AD administrator at the SQL server level. So I am here on the SQL server. And if you come down, let's come here. This is something called, you can see Active Directory admin, right? You see over here. So essentially what we are doing is we are going to add a super admin. So when I say super admin, I'm adding an Active Directory admin at the SQL server level. So which means that particular admin will have access by way of inheritance to any database created inside that uh, Azure SQL server. So you can have multiple database as a part of single server. So the first step that you will have to do is you can add Azure AD admin at the server level. That's to begin with. That's the first step. And then subsequently, you can also add Azure AD admin at the database level under the different database roles that you have. So you have seen those users there. Also, you can create it. So you can say, hey, I have added this admin, but now I have 10 different applications or developers who need access to 5 different databases. So in that case, you will not come over here and assign them permission which will give them super right on all database. Rather than for each, within each database, we will create those Azure AD users and grant them different database roles like DBO reader, DBO writer, the different database roles. But to begin with, you'll have to set your Azure or Active Directory admin at the SQL Server level first, at the top level. And you can only add one admin. You cannot add more than one admin, which means if you have multiple DBAs performing database administration for you, in that case, you will add a group which will include all these DB admins. So you cannot do like I add one user, one DB admin, then I can go ahead and add second one and third one. You cannot do it. You can only add one admin. So if you have a use case, if you have a requirement to have multiple admins have the same level of access on the SQL Server, Azure SQL Server to be precise, in that case you will create a group in Azure AD, add all these admins as a part of that group, and you will come back here and add that group as an admin. Okay, so let's come here. I will come here and I say set admin. Right, and remember this setting you have to do it at the uh, server level, that is Azure SQL Server level. Now I already have these users that you can see over here that I can add. I also have a group, but let's say we didn't have anything, and how would you go about doing it, right? So you will need first a user to be in your Azure AD. In it depends on how your Azure AD is configured, whether you are syncing object from on-prem or whether it's only cloud only, depending on how. In my case, I don't have any sync setup yet, so essentially I can go ahead and create my admin account in Azure AD. So I can come to Azure AD. I will show you, and I will go under my users. So here is I have different options, right? So I can add a user. If I already have added user, in that case, not a problem. But if I haven't, I can go ahead and create one over here, and I can also add a group. So which essentially will be a group of all my SQL DBAs. So let me add a user first, and I can say my SQL DBA1, and I can give DBA1 add on micro, sorry, easy farm dot on Microsoft. So this is my Active Directory name, so I can create one there. Rest other, I will here I can select my the groups that I want to add this user to, but I'm not going to do anything here. So I will go ahead and create one. This is what the password is. Obviously, I just leave it. It will ask you the first time you log in. It will ask you to change the password. So I will go ahead and create one. It has been created. Then I can add another one. SQL DBA2, and it will be SQL DBA2 at the rate easy form, which is my and I say good. Now, once you have your users created, you will essentially create a group. From here you can add a group. I already have a SQL group. So in that case, I would say SQL admin. can put in description. Then membership type, how do you want to? I don't want to enable any office features. Here I can select my member. So I will add these two guys that I've created. So where is my SQL DBA1 and SQL DB2? Select that. And this is my SQL DB admin group. And I say create. So essentially what I have done now here is I've created a group, added those two users as a part of that group. So now I can come back to my SQL. Resource group. Where I have it here. Azure app one. And where is my SQL server? So here is my SQL server. And I think where is my Azure AD? Here it is. So I will go ahead and set the admin. Now I can set the group that I've created, or I can add individual users. But remember, if you add individual users, you won't be able to make use of, you cannot add more than one. So in my case, I will add this group, or I can show you, maybe not just add one user, or maybe if I add this one, after this, you will see that I won't have an option to set the admin. So if I say save, so here is equal to admin. So if I go ahead again do it, so essentially what will happen is it will remove the earlier one. So you cannot have more than one. So let's say if I say, see, this replaces one, right? So we had, I will not save this. I'll come back here once again. So here is my Azure Active Directory admin. So SQL DB admin group is added. Now what I will do is I have, where is my, so essentially I will have to open an incognito window, and I'll have to change the password. Portal.azure.com. Or maybe, so I'll come here in my user. I have to look at the password. So where is my TP one? So I can reset the password. So I'll copy this and I'll come back in my incognito window, try to log in there. It will be SQL DBA1 at the rate azfarm.com. Uh, SQL DBA. Oh, let's see. Yes, it is. So now it's asking for the password. So I'll have to come back and where is the password? I have to reset once again. I copied it and I put in the password. It will ask me to change the password, and that's why I was trying to do that. I have to change the password, otherwise it won't let me log in through the SQL Server Studio. So I will change it to my usual password. Okay, so I'm logged in now. I'll come back here and I'll try to use that account. So essentially, what I'll do is I will have to just close this and open the session once again. This time we will make use of Azure Active Directory authentication. So it's equal, and if we come back here into my resources, we are going to resource group, Azure App One, and where is my file here? Right. So let's see if we have properly set up the Azure AD admin for this SQL box. So I come into Active Directory admin. Okay, this is good. And this group has that user, so I should be fine. So server name is correct. Now here, since we are going to make use of uh, Azure AD authentication, so if you look closely, you have three different options for Azure AD authentication. Uh, the first option is Azure Active Directory Universal Authentication. So that is something which you will use when you have MFA turned on. So there's something called multi-factor authentication. On any account, you can turn on that multi-factor authentication. So you will have to type in password. At the same time, will also receive a second factor of authentication in terms of SMS or Microsoft Authenticator or any kind of second factor. So you will select the first option, but that's not our case. Obviously, we are not going to use that. The second is Active Directory password authentication. That's what suits our case because we have identities only in cloud, and that's what we will select. You will select the Active Directory integrated authentication if you had ADFS or federation setup for your Azure AD to on-prem Active Directory. In that case, you will select Active Directory integrated authentication. Otherwise, uh, you know, in our case, our it's only the applicability is Active Directory password authentication. So we'll select that option, and I'm going to say Active Directory password authentication, and my user would change. So I'll come back. Let me get this. Oh, I can come here to where's which I copy it. Mm, 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 mm. So this is my username. I'll use this one, and I say this. Right now, remember we have not created this account in our SQL Server. It's not a local authentication. It's an account which exists in Azure Active Directory, and this is my Azure Active Directory name. And I will type in the password that I have reset it to. Let's see how it goes. Woohoo! So we are in. But this time, the authentication that has happened, we have not used any local authentication. Rather than we have used Azure AD integrated authentication. Right? So if I expand the database and masters and security and users, you will see that I don't have that user account that I have created because it's not a local authentication. However, subsequently, if you want to assign different roles, right? So if you look at here, you have database roles. Now, you want to grant any users into any of these roles, you can do so by allowing that user being part of this role. So currently, the SQL DB admin that you see over here, can you see this, right? So this is the group that we have added. Now, this group is part of users, but this is not a local user. It's an external entity from Azure Active Directory. So next time when you have to add any further users for your database, different database roles, in that case, you will have to come back and create a local user, but linking it to Azure Active Directory. So there's a whole syntax that you'll have to run to create the user that you can essentially you do it over here. And then you will add that user at the database level, granting different roles that you wish to for that particular database. So you can assign different securities that you wish to. Uh, so maybe DBO role that you want to give, or sorry, the roles that you want to give, DB access admin, backup. Depending on what you want to give, but you can use Azure Active Directory administration or Azure AD identities as opposed to local identities that we were using.
So when where is that user account which in the security? It doesn't show.
This it's here because it's at the server level, so it's a master database. Can you see this? This is
Oh,
the
that
group
is a
that we have
SQL.
added.
Oh, okay. Oh, that is a group. Okay.
This is the group. This is an external group.
Okay.
Okay, so essentially so when you create, so there's also a way to create at the database level. You want to create users at the database level, but linked to Azure Active Directory, you'll have to run a SQL query to do that. And when you look at closely at the SQL query, you will find out, you will realize that it's creating a new user, but then it says it's external and it's linked to Azure AD. So it's just a symbolic user account over here. It's just a symbolic one, but the actual user is in Azure AD, and that's the account that we have used to log
So
in
this is
currently.
a group, right? DB admin is a group.
Yes, this is a group, correct. But you can create further groups. Now remember, this is Azure AD admin at the server level. Now you will need users at the database level or group at the data. You want to grant rights at the data, so you can go ahead and create multiple users within the database. But you can't do it through GUI like we did it through portal. You have to come over here and you have to run a query
Oh,
inside your database.
oh,
So there is a script which you can use.
oh.
Maybe I can just pull that up. So create login. Yeah. So this is where it should be. Yep. This is the command that you will run. So when you say create user and you specify this at the URL, and when you specify the from external provider, essentially it tells the system should not create a user locally, but create a dummy user and link it to Azure AD. So maybe I can just do it quickly. So I will come over here. And I will write this, and this will change. I will create one for my Microsoft. Sorry. And if I'm going to go ahead and run it, oh, so I'm I'm connected to read-only database. So so I'll have to either fail over or I have to do the same configuration on the other. But what I wanted to say is, once you run this, so this parameter, the external provider tells this SQL server that create the user, but this user, is just a link, a reference to Azure AD, and his password exists in Azure AD. So it's not a local user. It failed because, remember, we initiated the failover. So now this is a read-only replica, the WoW Azure, and that failover has completed. And we are setting all this setting on the SQL server, not the SQL server one. I will quickly just I can come. So let's do it on the other guy. This one. And I will add the Azure Active Directory admin to this fellow also. And which was this right? SQL DB admin. I say select. And I say save. So now I will have to change my. I will copy this notepad and I will copy this guy. We need it for later. And also this need it for later. I'll close this guy.
You need to connect on SQL Server 1, right?
Yeah, that's what I will do now. Because now SQL Server 1 is my primary.
And you
The
need
SQL
to allow
Server.
in the firewall also.
Oh, wow. That's a good point. That's a good point. Yep. See. Yes, I did that. And this becomes 1. And then I put in my password. There you go. Now if I run this command, database, say new query, and I type in, and I say execute it. Couldn't be found out for this principle is not supported. Isn't it this users from external provider? Okay, what I'll do is maybe I will use this guy. Okay, so I have used this person. Now I should be able to see the user here. It's completed. So if I go in security, users, I will have it here. Right. So you can see that SQL DB. Now I can grant different roles to this user, and when you connect to perform any database, so this is here the database administration level, and the Azure AD administrator that we added that was at the server level. So you can add this local users created over here, which is symbolic user, to assign different database roles that you have here. So you can let me just come here. So essentially, to add that rule, you'll have to write a query, which I'm really not good at, but you can add this user different role depending on what role you give to that user. He will be able to perform that specific task inside that database. So if you give him a backup operator, he can only perform backup. If data reader, he can only read the data. Writer, he can only write. So they're different. These are the different database roles that you have. Uh, I will. I think now we are way 10 minutes over our time. Uh, any questions so far about Azure AD Integrated Authentication or whatever I covered for Azure SQL? No
So
questions?
every time we have to create this Azure AD admin
Hmm.
whenever we do a switchover. No, it's only once.
No, one.
But
So
you
let's
create
say,
it twice, right? For because
yeah,
one.
because
Uh,
yeah, you have to configure this at the server level. And remember, when you have the replica, Geo Replica, you have two servers. So you will set
and
the
then
admin at,
suppose if you have 6 replicas, you have to create 6 things.
yes. So this setting is at the server level. Right. So in your replica, if you have more than one, in that case, probably
So
you.
if you say Geo replica, so if I create on one, will not get replicated even the roles two on the other.
Uh, well, I really it should. The database users should. I need to check. Let's see.
Because
So we have added
usually
this
what you
user.
did is you
Yeah, maybe
replicated
the
it
Azure
and
AD. Yeah, Azure AD admin. That needed to be added, but in terms of the database users, so user inside the database, you see this, right, which we have created in the Wow Azure DB, should get replicated. Uh,
if you
let's
see
see.
in the secondary, if you go into on a
Yeah,
SQL
let's
server,
do this. Let's do this.
you can connect from there also, right?
Yeah, but that.
So needed just to add it. Basically, we can have practically some other challenges too. Maybe in DB1, prayers may be admin, and in DB2, I may be a write access or whatever, right? So you will be having the same person with a different rights into different databases. So how Azure Active Directory can take a call that? So little it will create a problem. Am I right?
No, sorry. So what you said. So we are talking about in terms of the replica, right? Now we are talking about the replication we had set up. So it should replicate the database, and let's see if we can verify that.
Yeah. So Neeraj, I was trying to say same only. If replication is working from the primary server to other server, then it is well and good. So in
Yeah, yeah.
other words, if you have a primary and we have a secondary, so primary prayers maybe admin rights will be having it, which we could have given a locally we could have created it, as you have explained us. And in the DB2,
Yeah.
prayers may be having only write access or read access. So it may be having little
No,
complexity.
so remember. Yeah. So yeah. So this is replicated, Naresh. So anything that you create within the
Yeah.
database, it gets replicated.
Hmm.
That's certainly I can see this user, right? So yes, it's a database. So obviously we are replicating the entire database. So that should get replicated.
Okay.
So in other words, whatever right has been given to a trace in the primary one, it the same will get replicated to other replicas too without doing anything.
Yes, secondary also. You will also have the same permission, but it's only like, and you cannot make any changes, right? So even if you have DB or writer role, you may not be able to do anything with secondary because it's a read-only replica.
Yeah, Neeraj.
Okay, so now maybe what we can do is we can turn on the TDE. We can quickly do that. So let's come back here, and this is what this is my this guy's primary, right? So we'll come here and we'll turn on the TDE. So let's come here. Oh, sorry. We'll have to go into the database, not the server. That setting is at the database level. So here is transparent data encryption. I can say go ahead and turn it on, and I say save. Encryption is in progress, right? So you can see that it is encrypting. So this is essentially will turn on the encryption at the database level, and now it says encrypted. Okay, so I think that's it. What else is left? We we almost covered pricing tier. We covered geo replication. We covered. Okay, so there is something called dynamic data masking. I don't know if you know about it not, but this is a feature inside SQL Server. So within the table itself, you can turn on masking. So let's say you have this, it's showing you all the uh, tables. So you have like, address table, and address table, you have this column. So you can specifically mask a particular column to so that the users don't see the actual data. It will be masked from the user. So this is another security feature which will be very handy for people who wants to enhance the security of data stored in Azure SQL. And this same feature is also available in SQL 2016 running on ISBox. So dynamic data masking. This is something which is uh, another security enhancement. So you can also set this. You can set this over here, or you can also set it by running, transact SQL command, tsql command from the SQL Server Management Studio.
Here's one more question I have. So, like this is database, right? So,
Mhm.
can we configure reporting services also on SQL Azure?
No, this doesn't support SQL Server reporting services. So Azure
So,
SQL
it will
doesn't.
have to like support pick reports or generate reports after using this.
So you will use you can, if you need a report, either two options. You can use Power BI, which is Microsoft Software as a Service,
Oh, okay.
and you can add these data sources to bring in that and produce the reports that you want. Or you can also have your SSRS running on a SQL server, which can connect to
And add a connector.
uh,
So let's like a
yeah, add a connector to pull the
connector.
data. Both
Okay.
options. But for reporting as such, you will use Power BI. Microsoft has that feature. Tableau. There are many other which you can use. But if you really be very specific about SSRS, then you fire up an infrastructure service box, and on that you will install SSRS, connect this to this guy.
Okay.
All right. I think I've covered everything. So any closing questions, comments? I didn't cover the Elastic database, but EDTU is something, as I said, it's elastic, and you can dynamically scale up and scale down in terms of how much DTU you need, and it's pretty flexible. And but Microsoft in the background manages the entire database. It can move around on multiple servers and go into different places, but you really don't need to be worried about. It's elastic. It's like, it scales up and down as per your need and requirement. Here you have to manually come and scale up. In case of elastic, it's automatically managed for you. Okay. No question. Then, I think we are 22 minutes over our located time. And thank you, all of you, to joining today's call. And, it was nice, talking to you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Neeraj.
Thank
You have
you.
covered a lot today, especially Active Directory integration, multiple features. So thanks for that.
All right. Thank you, Presh. All right. Talk
Thank
to you
you.
guys later.